and daughter Basundari and travels about 4 months a year. And Prabhuji is a Diksha Guru, is initiating spiritual master there. So we are very, very...
Turn to face.
You see, it's got the face. You can take it off.
So we are very, very fortunate to have His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, and Prabhuji gave his time. Prabhuji gave his time to come over here. So let us loudly welcome him by 3 times loudly chanting Hari Bol. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol!
Gauranga.
Gauranga.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
You can have till 8 then, but some college students may sit beside and take breakfast at 7:55.
Okay. Gauranga, Nityananda. Vishnupad Paramhansha Parivrajak Acharya Statara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace Obhoy Charanar Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Sham Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansha Parivrajak Acharya Statara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON DVT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ramsi Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Navadvipam Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanand. All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Go Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We have a verse or a topic or a
Topic, what topic? You took Vedic culture, Indian culture versus American culture.
Indian culture versus American
and
culture.
something about Prabhupada, your meeting with them. What you talk about, choosing cross-section, roads in cross-section in the talk in RL Nagar, that college you had come last Saturday. Something.
You want me to remember what I spoke about last Saturday? That's like a long time ago. You make that side higher.
Indian culture versus
You can guide me. What did I talk about at the? Remind me.
You're saying crossroads, how the West has been degrading and India is degrading furthermore.
Okay.
And your meeting with Srila Prabhupada there, and something about Srila Prabhupada. There are new boys there.
You want to hear the glories of America or the glories of India? The glories of America is that it's influencing the whole world with garbage. And the glory of India is it's getting influenced with the garbage. Any questions? That's it. That's the talk. It's over. Shnabadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutare Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschate Sutari. When Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur sent Prabhupada to America, his idea was that Krishna Govinda, his idea was that Western people will not accept things on blind faith. They will accept things with intelligence. And so, if you accept it with intelligence, logically, scientifically, and you understand things carefully, then once you accept it, you'll hold on to it. And if you accept it easily or cheaply, you could easily let it go. So he felt that the Westerners would, if they took to Krishna consciousness, they would take to it in a different way than the Indians would take to it, because it was new, and they didn't know what it was. So they had to, but definitely looked at it in a different way. At that time, as you may know, Prabhupada was trying to preach in India and attract young Indian men. But he couldn't. They weren't coming. They were not interested. Which in a sense, seems to be a blessing and an arrangement of Krishna, because if Prabhupada were very successful in India, that may have postponed his trip to America and slowed down the spreading of Krishna consciousness, or it may have diverted his energy. And so we see that Srila Prabhupada was not successful in India, especially not in attracting the youth. And he was sometimes asking parents for their kids, I will train them as Brahmins, kind of have a Gurukul type situation. But he couldn't get anyone. So then he went to America, as you know, arriving in 1965, and incorporated about a year later. I think the first initiation was in September of 1966, and he arrived in September of 65. So a year later, he finally had some disciples. And these disciples were very enthusiastic, and very dedicated and very faithful. And you just have to understand, people, when they saw devotees, number one, they didn't know who Krishna is, they didn't know what bhakti is, they didn't know what a devotee is. And it all seemed very strange to them. And so for someone to adopt Krishna consciousness, like these first 3 or 4 or 5 people, it was a, how should we say, they had to be special people, right? Imagine you adopt something now that only 5 people in India adopt. And it's a new way of looking, new haircut, new dress, new way of doing everything, new way of eating, new way of thinking. So you have to understand that it was quite a step out of the mainstream for those devotees to do it. And because they did it, and they had faith, other people came. Because if Prabhupada couldn't get 5 or 10 people, then he wouldn't have been successful. Because you need 5, 10 dedicated people, they will attract. They will bring in other people. So by around 1970, maybe we had 20 temples. When I joined, there were 17 temples. I joined in January of 1970. Started coming in the fall of 1969. And so I looked in BTG, and I think when I joined in January, there were 17 temples. Temple meant, in many cases, 4 devotees. So 17 times 4. Not a lot of devotees, but big temple was 35. So maybe 15 devotees. We're talking full-time devotees, 200, 300. Not a big movement. But it was being established. It was going on, and then Prabhupada wanted. He thought, now that I've established it in the West, I've opened centers, London, Paris, Germany, all over America. I want to go to India. And Prabhupada understood, once he brings back young American boys and girls, they're all your age, early 20s. Once he brings them to, when Prabhupada first came to India was 1970. I think November 1970, I was 20. So most of the people he brought were 20, 21, 22. Maybe the oldest ones might have been 28, something. It was like when Prabhupada came, the senior devotees in our movement were 28, 29. And, I was 19, so 29 was 10 years older than me. And that seemed old, but of course, I'm 68 now, so 29 seems quite young. But the point is, everyone was in their 20s. But Prabhupada knew that to break into India, he's going to need to bring Americans. In a lecture in San Francisco Ratiyatra, Prabhupada was speaking to a crowd, maybe 10,000 young people, all young people. And he said, the whole world follows America. If you become Krishna conscious, then the whole world will follow you. And the whole world will change. So that was his idea. Whether it was his idea initially when he got on the boat, I'm not sure. But when he came to America, he must have known America's exporting their, whatever you want to call it, but it's being exported. We'll just say their culture. They're exporting their culture. So he understood that the world is following America. And so he thought, I've established Krishna consciousness in the West. This is 5 years later, 1970. We have temples in a lot of major cities around the world. Let's go back to India and give it to my countrymen. One godbrother said, actually it was Prabhupada's plan to go to the West, establish it so he could get Westerners come back to India, because his real plan was India, and India would be the biggest. And as we can see, the biggest preaching, the greatest numbers and the most temples are in India. I can't say this will be true 100 years from now. You don't know how the culture of India will change. But we kind of know it's becoming very American. So we can't say in 100 years. But now, people are open, still open. Maybe less open than they were 20, 30 years ago, but still very open. So that was Prabhupada's idea. So he couldn't wake the people up in India. They weren't paying attention. Well, they definitely paid attention when he came back with white elephants, white dancing elephants. And he used to call his disciples, "You're my white dancing elephant." And the analogy is, obviously, if you bring a white dancing elephant out on the street, it's going to attract a lot of people, right? Yeah? So it did attract a lot of people. I can tell you from my own experience, when I first came to India, it was 1975. So the movement was still young. Still it was very new to people. There was nowhere I ever went in public where people wouldn't stop me. Where are you from? What are you doing? Why you dress like this? It was impossible. Never. Now I go to the airport, no one asks me anything. Never, ever does anybody say, "Where are you from? What are you doing? Why are you dressed this way?" They just completely ignore me. Like I don't even exist. I sit in the airport and they pretend I don't exist. It's like somehow or other they don't want to deal with it. But in those days it was a novelty. And because people had, now it's Hare Krishna, whatever, Western person in the dhoti. We're not even interested. They're all wearing suit, tie, or the latest Gucci this, or, whatever. Pierre Cardin that. They don't, dress like this. They're like, loser, why are you doing this? Get a life, that's probably how they're thinking, But in those days it was like, wow, you become a sadhu, you're American, that's amazing. Why would you do that? Such a wealthy country, and you're adopting the culture of a poor country, living like a sadhu. Why would you do that? It's just they couldn't figure that out, because they're all trying to be like America, and they couldn't figure out why an American would give up the things that they're going for. It's like they're flying this way to America and we're flying this way to India, and they're like, why are Americans flying to the place we want to go? It just didn't make sense to them. So it was a novelty and it attracted attention. And Prabhupada would have Jamuna, a woman, so 1975, a woman leading kirtan and preaching to 10,000 people in a pandal. And she's like 25 years old, an American. Like, wow. So that was like double the Shakti, It's already weird that we're Americans, and then he puts a woman there, women didn't even drive cars in 1975. They didn't do much, right? Like they do much more now, but then mostly they were just housewives and mothers. So he puts a woman, so it was a sensation. People were going crazy. So then Prabhupada would preach very heavy. In India, he'd preach very heavy. Sometimes if you see Prabhupada preaching in India, it's practically screaming at people. Have you seen? He didn't preach that way in America. You can't scream at people in America. They're not gonna, they don't understand. But you could scream at Indians, because it's like if I told you to do something and you don't do it, I can scream at you. But if I didn't tell you to do it and you don't do it, I can't scream at you. So the Americans don't know, so you can't scream at them, but the Indians know. So basically he was screaming at them and saying, I didn't go to America to beg technology like you do. You're going to America to beg from them. I went to America to give culture. But you're going to America to beg technology. And he would say, this is your culture, this is your duty, what are you doing? You're giving it up, you're forgetting it. And it was just really, really heavy. Yeah, very heavy. Have you seen videos of Prabhupada? You know, not talking, yelling. Isn't it? Yeah? Like, you know, how can you do this? This is your culture. What are you doing? You're wasting your life. Running after American culture. So, you know the history, but it was the American devotees and a few European devotees that came here that were responsible for establishing Vrindavan, Mayapur, Mumbai, those three main temples. They did it. They raised the money. Most of it came from our collections. Most of it came from outside. So, you want to hear about American culture? What it is? It's very simple. You've heard it, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You know, they're better at it than you are. You know, India's not that good at it. I mean, you're good at eating, definitely good at eating. That I have to give you. You're good at eating, but sleeping maybe also. But when you expand eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, the Americans are much more sophisticated at sense. Let's say Americans are good at sense gratification, right? India, you're not that good at sense gratification. You never were because you were never meant for it. And funny thing is, for me, it's a little different now. A little the same, but much different. Earlier in India, when Indians were trying to become westernized and enjoy like Westerners, you know, starting to drink and eat meat and Western music, they weren't very good at it because they didn't have the samskars. They were too pious. They were too religious. So I watched them trying to do it. And it was, you know, in those days they couldn't even like play guitar. They couldn't figure out how to play guitar like a Westerner. It's just, you know, there was too much Indian culture in them, in their blood, to play. It's just like it wasn't in their head. They couldn't do it. Or you know, movies, sensual movies and like that. It was like nobody would watch it. It would, you know, people would protest. It wasn't in the blood, in the culture, in the samskars. So I'd watch them try to enjoy. I'd see them, Indian tourists coming to America, you know, Disneyland, SeaWorld, you know. They weren't very good at it. They didn't really know how to do it. They know how to eat. They know how to have family and they know how to have a lot of children and how to eat a lot and work hard. But they really didn't know how to enjoy this kind of sense gratification Americans did. They really were bad at it. In my opinion, they were really bad at it because they were too religious. What's he saying?
Flowers.
Oh, okay. Just like if you're too materialistic, it's really hard to be religious because it's a different mentality. So they were too religious, so it was hard for them to be not materialistic, but like sensually, like deeply sensual. The Americans are very good at that. And everything that's going on now in India, such as feminism and equal rights, for this and that, and disbanding the caste system, that was all happening in America in 1965. So now you're like 50 years later, it's happening in India. So basically what's happening in India now is you're getting better at sense gratification. Now you can actually play guitar. You have rock and roll bands. 50 years ago, they couldn't. It wasn't in the brain couldn't like adjust to rock and roll. It wasn't the culture. I mean, maybe there was one or two, but I know because I do kirtan. And you know, when I come here to do kirtan, I would ask, "Does anybody play bass? Does anybody?" I was just like, and you'd finally get someone. So he plays guitar, but okay, show me what you do. And he couldn't play. They just couldn't. It was a different time, a different culture. And so now what's happening? You had 50 years for American culture to influence you. So now you see you're getting much better at sense gratification, right? Look at how the women dress. They couldn't dress that way 50 years ago. If they did, they'd be arrested, or everyone would just call them a prostitute. Isn't it? And the average woman didn't have the mentality and the samskar and the culture to dress that way, right? But you've had 50 years or 40 years of rubbish coming from America. So you've all, I don't say all of you, but a lot of you have been reprogrammed. So now you're better at enjoying sense gratification like Americans. And then with social media, it's like one world culture now. That broke the barriers down, you know. MTV and Facebook, that was it. You know, after MTV and Facebook, you guys were finished. That's what changed your culture, in my opinion. You had your version of MTV, right? Some, music videos. And then Bollywood started getting degraded along with it. It was following, right? So, in 75, or I don't know when it started, but there was not even kissing in a movie. Did you know that? That was like, pornographic. If a boy and a girl kissed in a movie, that was pornography. Wasn't it? So, and all the young people are like, oh my God, our parents are so out of it and so conservative. Yeah. But it's bewildering also because in 1975 in India, if you wanted to make an overseas call, it took you 3 hours. You had to go to the post office, you had to, stand in line, and then you'd call, and you'd have to yell, because of course it was on the other side of the world, so you had to yell. Hello! I'm serious. Can't hear you. Then the call would drop, So, seriously, when I was in India, I was in the post office, right? And I thought I went back in a time machine to 1935 America, because I figured this is probably what America was like in 1935. It was very inefficient, and the buildings were all probably built in like 1850, and hadn't been cleaned since 1850, or painted or anything. Well, it was really, really backwards. As you know, one car only. Kind of strange, right? Look at it now. It's so. So that's the paradox, because you look and say, yeah, well, it was so bad in 75, we only had one car, it was just, there weren't more than two classes, the rich and the poor, basically, right? And now there's so many opportunities, there's so many new universities, and you can get a degree, and if you excel, you can get a job in America. If you get a job at Microsoft in Seattle, you'll start at about $120,000, not rupees, a year. That's pretty good, right? Because you could live as a single man in Seattle for about $40,000 and put away about $80,000. That's like a lot of money for the average Indian, especially in 1975. That could have been their lifetime salary. So look at the opportunities, right? But as I've seen everywhere in the world, not just India, when the economy develops, people become more irreligious. And if you go on Google, you can find charts which will show the decline in religion with the rise in the economy of different countries and cultures. So if you go back to America, in like 1920, 93% of the people, or 99%, some high, were religious, believed in God. Now it's like 38%. And they've done surveys or studies in countries around the world. It's the same thing. Economy goes up, religion goes down. Isn't that interesting? Participation in religion, belief in God. So the problem is when you import American culture and all the good things, like now, economic opportunities, better medical care, better living standards, but you also import problems. Like, look at your cities. Like, congratulations, Indians. Your cities are rated amongst the top most polluted cities in the world, with Banaras, I think, being number one, or Delhi is competing with Banaras. Soon you'll also be in the top 10. So that's what we've created. Obviously, all the degradation, you see it. You don't have to have me tell you. You know what we're talking about. And the sad thing is that Indians have such a beautiful culture. And that's also going out the window, right? And now, so many people think, as you know, you are crazy for joining ISKCON. Yes? Why would you join ISKCON? You've got a good education, you've got good opportunity. You know, what to speak if you become brahmachari? I mean, after you graduate from this good school with a good degree and you could make money, what to speak of, going to the West and making money? And you become a brahmachari. Oh my God. What could be worse than that? Yes? And Prabhupada came to America to make brahmacharis. Give up all opportunity for material enjoyment. So, it seems to me, I don't have to tell you these things because you see, all our gurus, most of them are from America or Europe. So you understand all of this, that they gave everything up. And you're understanding now why. So maybe we should talk about the position of material enjoyment. Like, what's its position in Krishna consciousness? Like, what about it? Like, is it good? Is it bad? Is American culture good or bad? There are many good things about it, and as you know, there are many things. India has evolved in a way that when the culture becomes perverted, it creates so many problems. Right? Like you have super high rate of abortions, don't you? You have lots of problems, obviously due to ignorance, but some of the problems are due to a perversion of your own culture. So your culture becomes, I don't know if we pervert it as a way, but it's misunderstood. It degrades. So in some cases, you'll find Americans have, on average, higher moral principles and values than Indians in some sectors of American society, in some sectors of Indian society. And of course, in India, it's kind of like, the way I see India is like you're putting a gun in the hands of kids. It's like, somebody comes out of a village and he gets some money, but he's not educated, and he's always lived in a village, and he knows how to take care of cows and grow vegetables, but he doesn't know how to function in a city, and you put some money in his hand and he becomes an alcoholic. Right? Or, he gets a job as a truck driver, and every truck stop he goes to see a prostitute. Because Shudras weren't supposed to have money. Right? So that's part of the problem that you're running into. And then another problem that I see is just the American perspective. People know too much, but actually they don't know too much. They think they know, but they actually don't know. And so it becomes a problem because they think they know. We as Americans did not know anything about Vedas, Hinduism, like that. So obviously we knew we didn't know. But many Hindus misunderstand shastra and their own religion, but they don't know that. And many of those that don't know it are gurus, and innocent people follow. So that's a huge problem in India, obviously. You understand that. Another problem that I see, which is an interesting problem, is that this knowledge, which is accessible to everyone, can be dangerous in the hands of people who don't understand it. So, for example, in your culture, or any culture, any traditional culture, elders are honored, elders are respected. We hear that in ancient times when the child would wake up in the morning, he would bow to his mother, mother is first guru, things like that, which is unheard of in the Western culture. You could get arrested for doing that. Child abuse. She's making her child bow down to him in the morning. The child takes the mother to court. This is child abuse. Serious, I'm exaggerating, but not completely exaggerating. That's the Western mentality. So you have that, which is very good. You respect the mother, you respect the teacher, you respect the elder brother, you respect the king, you respect the guru. Yes? You respect the Brahmins. Brahmins are worshipped. Who's protected? Elders are protected. Brahmins are protected. Cows are protected. Women are protected. Children are protected. But respect, this is culture. Anywhere in the world where there's culture, there's always respect going up, right? In America, we all became devotees. Our parents said, don't do it, don't leave, don't drop out of university. We love you, don't go. See you later. Nice knowing you. And we're off. That's, that culture of respect doesn't exist. Fortunately, it didn't exist. It made it easy for us to become devotees. It was like, this is what I'm doing. Don't do it. I don't care what you say. This is what I'm doing. You can't tell me I'm 18. And you don't know anything, and you're just a fool. So why should I listen to you? You eat meat, and you drink wine, and you're just a karmi. So why should I listen to you? That's our culture, which is not culture, but that's our culture. But that's why we became devotees. So the bad culture had an advantage, and your good culture has a disadvantage. Is that you have to respect people that aren't worthy of respect. So when you have a culture where you should respect superiors, it doesn't work if the superiors aren't superior. Right? So you respect your father, and your father's number one degraded drunkard, this, that, and the next thing, abuses your wife, abuses your brothers and sisters, and you're supposed to respect him? Yeah, well, that's the culture, respect. You have to respect me. If you don't respect me, you're a bad son. So then that's the misuse of the culture, right? You understand? So you get that with guru, you get that with king, you get that with leader, elder brother, uncle, unless they're qualified. If you respect them, the whole system doesn't work, right? So you have so many, like the wife, the woman. What are the qualities of a woman? She shouldn't even eat till her husband finishes eating. That's like the traditional, woman. Of course, you very rarely find such women. Maybe in the villages it still goes on. But she should always be friendly, dress nice. When the husband comes home, smile, always submissive, don't argue, Okay, beautiful qualities of a woman. Where is the man that's worthy of such a wife? Because most men would just totally exploit a woman like that, right? Isn't it? And you see that, especially uneducated men. Because that's the Indian culture, so they take advantage of it and they abuse their wife. I was just reading a survey. I don't know if it was India, but Pakistan. It may be India also. I can't say. At least I'll say Pakistan. It said, the survey said, I don't know how they know this, they said 90% of women, married women, are physically abused. Because the husband's always right. And if the husband's always right, he can abuse the woman who's supposed to not say anything, not talk back, be always chaste, friendly. Right? So that's what it turns into. So when people see that, you have a feminist movement who said, I'm not going to listen to men anymore because why should I listen to them? Because they're stupid. And they abuse women. And that's where all the feminism comes from. If you had men who were actually qualified, gentle, humble, caring, loving, you wouldn't need a feminist movement. If you had men that gave women the opportunities that they wanted, facilitated, you wouldn't have a feminist movement. You wouldn't need it. Feminist movement is because the men didn't give that to the women. They dominated. They wouldn't give them opportunity. They didn't respect them well. So that's the problem I see in Vedic culture. Not in Vedic culture, in Indian culture. It starts to pervert, and then you want to demand that culture, but nobody's qualified now, right? It's like an unqualified guru. Surrender to me. Why should I surrender to you? You're bogus, right? It's right in Bhagavatam, Bali and Sukracharya, right? You understand? So that's one aspect of Vedic culture that I see is very problematic. The lack of education and bringing village people into a modern world which they've never lived in and they're not ready for. They don't adapt well, they get degraded by it. The propaganda, move into the city, then you create slums and so forth, and overcrowded cities. I think a lot of the problem in India is because previously about 80% of the country was agricultural. And now you're moving into these big cities and you're not ready to deal with them, so you've polluted them. I mean, there's nowhere I've been in the world that has cities designed and engineered haphazardly like Bangalore. We're just you should go to China. If you want to get embarrassed, go to China. You'll be so embarrassed. It's a country with the same number of people that you have that is completely organized, totally clean, amazing. Amazing. You know what they did in China? They built a highway above the roads in the city. There's a highway, so you call an overpass. It's an overpass for 100 kilometers. You can go anywhere in the city on the overpass. It's amazing, right? And even with the crowds, the traffic is never as bad as this, even though they have the same or more cars. Probably they must have more cars because there's more money there. So I first went to China, and I couldn't believe I was in China. I thought I was in New York City. It was so modern and clean and organized. And my first thought was, why can't India get it together? Maybe you can answer that question better. Maybe it's more corrupt or whatever. But there's obviously a problem with India becoming modern. And there's collateral, you know better than I do, you live here, all the collateral problems that have developed from it. But when I'm here and I'm in a city and I'm sitting in the car in India going about 3 kilometers an hour, so I could walk 3 kilometers an hour. It's like I'm sitting in a car polluting the air. Why don't I just walk? It's healthier. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how did you create this? How did you go from the Vedic culture and sadhus and sages and tirthas and mantras to this? You know whose fault it is? It's America's fault, because you fell for it. You bit the bait and you fell for it, and this is what you created. And it goes back to my original point that you're not really good at sense gratification. And just walk around the neighborhood, and go and walk around an American neighborhood. You'll understand that statement. You're not very good at sense gratification. Because if this were in a neighborhood in America looked like this is the slum in America, believe it or not. I'm serious. This neighborhood, which you probably think is like a nice neighborhood, this in America is the slum. Streets like this and houses like that, and cars that can't get through a street. Nobody would live in a neighborhood like that, unless you didn't have any money. Believe it or not. Yes. Question, yes.
You came from an American background, from a Christian background. So how?
No, Jewish.
Jewish background. So how that faith came when you talk about Krishna, spiritual world. So what gave you that experience of faith and then you practice in the last 50 years?
Mm-hmm.
So that faith, how it was easy. You have heard from Krishna about
Well, you have heard from Krishna, about Krishna from childhood, and you take it for granted. Yes, a little bit?
Yes.
And we didn't. We heard about, who do we hear about? Hansel and Gretel, the 7 dwarfs, the 3 dwarfs, whatever. We heard all the fairy tales. They're fairy tales, and you heard stories of Krishna. So we were empty, and you were taking it for granted. So you weren't very hungry, and we were really hungry, right? Because your whole life you had it. So for you, it's just normal. Yeah, I'm not the body, I'm soul, there's reincarnation. Yeah, there's sadhus, there's yogis, there's meditation. For you, it's like, yeah, whatever. That's just like baseball or football, for Americans, sadhus and tirthas and Mahabharata, That's like, for you, that's like for football to us is Mahabharata to you, But for us, it's like no tirthas, no yogis, no meditation, no sadhus, no shastra, no tattva, no siddhanta. So we're growing up in this big void, and Christianity and Judaism is kind of like, why are we suffering? Where do we come from? You can't understand all that. It's God's inconceivable, something, and don't worry about it, and so for many of us, that didn't work. So then we read Bhagavad Gita, we're 20 years old, so we spent 20 years in ignorance. You imagine you're lost for 20 years and you finally find, this is the street I've been looking for 20 I finally found the way. It's like, that street's pretty important. So we finally get Bhagavad Gita, and it's not like, oh yeah, my grandfather read this book, and my grandmother used to tell me stories, and, like, what's the big deal, I got to go to university and make a lot of money. I'll do this when I'm 70, Isn't it? Yeah, that's your culture. Yeah, that's for when you retire. Now we're going to get good grades and get a good job and get a nice house and car. Right? For us, it was the opposite. We were born and raised with a nice house, a nice car, all of that. We didn't care. It was like, for us, the nice car, the nice house, it was the same for you as Mahabharata and sadhus. For us, it was nice car, nice house. Who cares? Everybody has that. That's just normal. So we were like totally opposite from you, right? All the things that you value is because you didn't have them. And all the things you didn't value that much is because you had them. So we had the money, the cars, this and that. And so for us, it was like, what's the big deal? Everyone in America has like 2 cars. One for you, one for your wife, and one for your 16-year-old kid. My family had 3 cars. Because I was 16, I had a car. And all my friends had cars. What's the big deal? How many 16-year-old Indians have cars? Boys. Like 3 or something? And their fathers are all and they stole the keys from the car anyway. So, when we read Bhagavad Gita, that was answering all the questions that weren't answered in our own religion, our own culture. And we're looking at this culture of sense gratification, and we're seeing it doesn't work. It's just like people are doing it, and we go, this does not work. And America's had, lots of sense gratification for like 100 years, and then we're born. So we have this history of massive amounts of sense gratification. So we grow up with it, and we think, well, it's not working. But the real answer to your question, I believe, is that those people who took to Krishna consciousness very easily, like we did, like some devotees took to it in a few days, just went to the temple, and a few days later became brahmacharis. How does that happen? You don't even know who Krishna is. You never even read Bhagavad Gita, and 3 days later you're a brahmachari. You're out in the street doing sankirtan, distributing books, telling people to surrender to Krishna. How does that happen in 3 days? Is that amazing? So the answer is because they were devotees. Where did that faith come? It already was there from a past life, and we were just waiting for it. And by divine arrangement, we didn't find it till Prabhupada came, because Prabhupada needed people to help him. So Krishna kept us away from all the nonsense. Prabhupada came, then we were ready, and we were ready to help his mission. It was transcendental. It was a transcendental reality. So, how important is money? How important is a good job? Money is needed. A good job is needed because you need money. But it's not all important. It's not important enough to give up your Krishna consciousness for it. Krishna consciousness is more important. Yes? Yes. Yeah, so that's Prabhupada's gift. You have to work. If you're not going to be a brahmachari, you're going to be grihastha. So you're going to do some job. The problem that we're facing now is that job you're doing could completely destroy you, because if you're working 12 hours a day, in a hellish environment. That's really difficult. How many of you are working yet? So, can I have your testimony? How many hours a day? From the time you leave home to the time you... Okay, let's get a reality check. From the time you leave home to the time you come back, how many hours? 8 to 10. Okay, we have any more than 8 to... This is from time you leave to time you're home.
Plus traveling.
Yeah, add the traveling. 8 to 10 plus traveling. Including traveling? 8 to 10. Okay. You? How many hours? 10? 10 hours. Okay. So,
6 to 8 hours.
well, you're lucky. What, you work for your father? His boss is asleep, I guess. Or his boss only works 4 hours. Okay, so 10 hours. And how is the environment at work? What's it like? Work environment? You're by yourself? Or the association is...
IT company.
So
half of the days
the
you work
cult-
from home only.
Oh, you work from home. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's why he works less, yeah. The environment where you work?
I'm in the educational teaching
Coaching
Teaching.
children.
Oh, that's different.
Yes.
Where do you work? IT? How's the environment? What? Hellish environment. He works at home. That's good. He teaches. That's a different environment. How many of you are going into IT? Okay. So the point, I don't want to disappoint you or discourage you. Although I just did. But it's yeah. It's a challenge. And so you don't the challenge we all have is how to be Krishna conscious working in that environment, right? That's a challenge. And always giving that the priority. And not going crazy, because I see in India, everybody, it's all about, I'll get this job, then I'll get this job, then I'll get this job. And so your whole life, you're just changing companies so you can get more prestige and more money, isn't it? In Japan, it's like one company for like 800 years, right? And they're so dedicated to their company. So, if you can get in a company that you like and you don't have to work, so many hours, better work there and make less money and be more Krishna conscious. Yes? What if you got a job and you only had to work 6 hours and you could work from home, but you made 30% less than the 10-hour job working in a hellish environment? What's better for your Krishna consciousness? Make a little less, and of course your wife has to agree to that, but that's another thing. But this is a huge problem in India that you face. Indians are mad after money. More mad after money than any country I have ever been in. And I've been in a lot of countries. They are more mad after money than anybody. So if you get affected by that, you'll compromise. And you'll always be job better. You might compromise your Krishna consciousness for that better job. And then you'll have a better title on your card, so you can walk around with your head in the sky and give your card out. I'm the co-director of this, instead of just some ordinary computer programmer. Now you're head of the department, and that's on your card, and wow. You just meet people. Here's my card, Isn't that the Indian culture? Position is like, isn't it? Position's like, what's on your card is pretty important. You want to hear something funny? Like, in America, someone will give you a card, and they're like the president, like the CEO of Google, and it doesn't even say that on their card. It just says their name and their contact info. Isn't that interesting? And in your country, it's like, you've got all these titles, I don't even know what they are, like, all the titles, turn it over, more titles, it's like, isn't it? That's not an American thing. You might say the CEO of some company, but you won't list all your degrees, and that's not part of it. So don't fall into that trap. Money and prestige and position is... Okay, here, this is the funny part of Indian culture. You import American culture, but you import stuff that's not even in American culture. Like this. Like all the titles, H, B, C, D. I don't even know what they are. A, B, C, D, G, E. You know, like, what are these titles? Oh, that's just I passed this exam, you know, down the street at this little educational institute, you know. Now I'm a certified whatever, you know, computer cleaner or something. Isn't it? Yeah, well so the funny thing for us as Westerners, we see you're trying to copy the West, and then you import all these things that we don't even, that are like worse than us. So in some ways, you become worse than we are. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it? You know, there's a lot of people in America, you know, it's like, okay, I make enough money, you know, I've got a job, that's it, it's fine. I'll make this much money, it's plenty. I don't need more. I don't need to save, like, you know, crores of rupees. Why are you saving crores of rupees? I don't know. It's just what you do. Why are you working 15 hours a day? So I can save crores of rupees. Why are you saving crores of rupees? I don't know. Maybe I'll need it someday. You already have 3 houses. You know, like, isn't that enough? I don't know. Maybe it's enough. You know, it's like Americans don't think like that. You know, if they get a job here, this is an American. You're gonna love this and hate this. If you tell American, here's a job for $100,000 a year, it's 12 hours a day, it's in a toxic environment, you're gonna have to drive, you know, like a long way to work, and you're gonna have to work with a lot of bad people. And here's a job for $60,000 a year, in a really nice company, you only have to work 8 hours a day, in a really nice environment, and a great boss, and like that. They'll take the 60, not the 100,000. You're like all fainting now. They're so stupid. Why would they do that? No, you're so stupid. Because you would take it and destroy your life. They won't do that. The number one motivator in America, in the workplace, is not money. It's not money. Can you believe that? Having a nice culture, a nice boss in an occupation that inspires you, that's the number one decisive factor, not money. In India, from what I've seen, the decisive factor is one thing, and one thing only. How much do I make? You willing to work this hellish job this hours? If I make this much money, yeah, I'll do it. That's the difference. So you've copied America, and you went way overboard to even act in ways Americans don't act. Isn't that interesting? For us, as Americans, we watch this and we're like, oh my God, what is happening to India? You're worse than we are in certain ways. Here, sir, take my wheel. Oh, I'm knowing all these things. I have. Oh, really? Really? Well, what's the first verse of the 7th chapter? Since you know all these things. That's another problem. I'm knowing all these things. Yeah, right. You are knowing how to forget all these things. That's what you're knowing. So I think that's the biggest problem. That in adopting American culture and mixing it with your own culture, you got something worse. Whereas you had something really good. And so, you know, there's no problem with American culture and technology and all that. But when that controls you, that's the problem. When it's money is everything, that's the problem. Yes? Money is important. It's not unimportant, but it's not all important. Now, the next thing, you know what Prabhupada said? He said, the biggest obstacle for Indians is money, and the biggest obstacle for Americans, Westerners, is sex. For Indians, sex is okay, but money. If it's money or sex, it's money. Westerners, it's more sex than money. You know, that's the disease. Prabhupada said, Indian disease is money, Western disease is sex. But certainly, since you're good at importing culture, that disease will, you know, soon overtake you. So it'll be sex and money will be like equal, you know, absorption in the mind. So that's all coming. So it's already come, I'm sure, right? Pretty much, it's already coming. Then the other thing is, at least my opinion and my observation is, When you come from a very pious religious culture, and then all this materialism is thrown at you, it's like giving you guns and you're not trained to use them. It's like really hard to use, so you can easily become more degraded. So the girls want to be liberated. They'll start to become more degraded than Western girls in their desire to rebel against the culture, right? They want to be American, so they're rebelling against the culture. Yes? So that's the danger. You could become more degraded. And the more degraded the girls become, the more degraded the society becomes. The girls are the barometer of degradation. Because the guys, they're already degraded. It's the girls that keep them from becoming degraded, right? The guys are ready for sex like 24/7, isn't it? They're just, the the 20-year-old male body, it's ready for sex at all hours of the day. But because women are chaste and won't give it, it protects the men. Otherwise, when women aren't chaste and they'll give it, the men will go for it. So as the women become unchaste, the whole society degrades because the men are already ready. The men by nature are ready to degrade. Right? So the degradation of women is the barometer of how society is becoming degraded. And I always believed that. And I always thought, I will know Indians' degradation just by seeing how women dress. Because 75 years ago, sari, not even Punjabi, maybe the Punjabis wore them, but everyone else wore saris. There was not one woman wearing a skirt in 1975. I never saw it. What to speak of jeans? Unless they were from America. No Indian woman. T-shirt and jeans? Are you kidding? Do you think their father would let them wear a T-shirt and jeans? You think people on the street wouldn't spit at them if they did? Yes. So then I started seeing the change of dress, and I go, oh, this is the barometer. I don't need to know anything else. I just need to see, I need to watch the movies, MTV, Bollywood, and see how women dress, and I can tell you exactly the state of India. And now you're pretty much on par. Well, you're not that bad yet, but the younger generation is on par with America. Worse, because you smoke. Americans, like, if you smoke, you're an idiot. That's what. If you smoke in America, you are a certified idiot. Now, 50 years ago, if you smoked, you were cool. So you're 50 years behind. So you smoke, you're cool. Right? So, yes, but if you smoke in America, like, why are you smoking? Only stupid people do that. So you see the problem in adapting the Western culture? It's like you're not really trained for that. You don't understand it. And the women are smart enough to realize what's going on that the men can exploit them. And that's what Prabhupada said feminism was all about. The women are like, yeah, we'll have sex. The men are like, great. And the women are thinking, we're liberated. And the men are laughing at the women. Oh, we got you. We brainwashed you to think you're liberated, but all you are is you become prostitutes for us, and we don't have to pay you. This is great. We like it. More feminism, And the women don't understand that. Yes? Right? So that's what we're dealing with. And if you understand these things, it will empower your preaching, because then you can tell Indians, this is what is happening. You are copying in America. You're importing the garbage, and you're mixing it with our own garbage, and you're making smellier, bigger garbage than even you had started with your imported. And they need to understand that, because otherwise it's just, who knows where it's going to go. America has, the Christian religion has high morals, so you can go, if you give up Hinduism, then what do you have? But Americans by nature, honesty and morality, it's just built into the culture, even if you're an atheist. But in India, even if you're a spiritualist, you'll lie, you'll cheat. It's just like, why? Why not? Everybody does it, isn't it? So that's a big problem for you. You have a culture which is, it's okay to lie and cheat, and because after all, it's all about money. And money's the siddhanta. So anything for money. Whatever you do for money, it's moral. Right, kind of, So that's not, American culture is not exactly like that. So then, it's a big mess for you guys. Because you're importing something that in America, it could work okay without degrading it. But here, it gets into your culture, and it doesn't exactly work the same way. And then you end up with, slums everywhere, and you call them beautiful neighborhoods. And we're like, huh? There's a beautiful neighborhood? You can't even fit 2 cars down the street. And all day I hear people honking, there's no peace and quiet, and that's a beautiful neighborhood? And you paint the houses all these ugly colors, like lime green and purple and hot pink, and you call that a beautiful neighborhood, and there's trash everywhere on the street, and nobody picks it up. Like, I don't get it. And you think India is progressing? Yeah. That's how we think. And if you've been to America, okay, I know I went over time, but I have to say this. I have many friends who are devotees, raised in India, moved to America when they're 20, 30, 40. Of course, a lot of students go to America and they never leave. But these are families that came when they were a little older. And I said, can you move back to India? And they go, no, I can't. I said, why? It's too dirty. It's too disorganized. So they become like Americans. They become used to living, they're Indians, and they can't even move back to India after being in America because, they actually tell you the truth. Isn't that amazing? Like when you ask what something costs, they tell you what it costs. The actual price. They don't try to cheat you, and isn't that amazing? And the teachers actually teach the students. They don't kind of not teach them so they can get hired for tuition, and like things are just kind of normal when the streets are big and wide and clean, and isn't that amazing? So they live that way, and they can't come back to India. I go, how can I live? And they're devotees. You'd think devotees can't move back to India. Isn't that amazing? Don't you think that's amazing? Yeah. So I don't know. I could say more, but you get the idea, right? If you can preach like this to your people, that will help. If you can understand, how the American thing, when it mixes with the Indian thing, kind of becomes worse than the American thing. And that you have something really good, that yoga and kirtan, that the Americans are grabbing onto because they see the value of it, because in their culture it's empty. Because as the saying goes, they're so poor, all they have is money. So you can say, the Americans are so poor, all they have is money. You have the wealth of the Vedas, you have the wealth of potential happiness, you have the wealth of potential shanti, all these things. You have this great wealth. All the Americans have is money, and you're running after money like that's the ultimate thing, and giving up your shanti, giving up your sukha. And what are you getting? Dukkha. Now you have abundance of dukkha and not much sukha, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So I'll stop. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Oh, he has a question. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Actually, there were many first years, means they were chanting for last 2 months.
Yes.
So they went for college. So one of them had a question.
Yes.
So I just asked you.
Okay.
It's being recorded.
Okay. Yes.
So he had this question. That we usually hear that all the paths, they lead to the same goal.
Yes.
So he was asking, if everything leads to the same goal, what inspired you to take up to this path of Krishna consciousness?
Because every path I took up didn't lead to the same goal. Yeah, every path leads to sex, basically, in America. Every path leads to sex samadhi. That's basically the culture it's infested with sex samadhi. Prabhupada was the only one who could explain the Vedas. Everyone else was Mayavads. The thing about Mayavads is I don't even think the Mayavads understand what they're saying. I'm you, you're me, the oneness, It's all one energy, so the money and you are the same, and if you want to get rich, it's you are that energy, money, and you just have to realize it. And that beautiful woman, you and her, you're both God, and if you realize that she's God and you're God, then she'll come to you because she is you. It's like, huh? Could you say that again? I've got a degree in astrophysics, but I can't understand what you said. So, all these people are reading it and they're thinking, these young hippies are, did you read this book? It's amazing. And well, what did it say? I don't know, it's so esoteric, you can't understand it. So that was we thought, wow, this is high philosophy. It's so high, nobody can understand it. You are me, I am you, we are one. We're all God, there's no God, It's the energy that flows within us and without us that you feel and I feel. And I'm like, wow, hey man, that's deep. You're smoking ganja and you go, that philosophy, it's really deep. Yeah. Can you feel it? Yeah, I feel that energy. Do you feel the oneness? Yeah, I feel the oneness. It's like what? So it's like no commitment, because you don't know what to commit to. And then Prabhupada comes, you're not the body or spirit soul, you're a servant of Krishna, this is your karma, past life. And I was like, oh, okay. Now, that's why. Because Prabhupada made sense of it. And also Prabhupada lived it, which was very important. Not just that we had the knowledge. So I did other kinds of meditation. It didn't get me anywhere. Well, it got me $35 poorer, but other than that, what did you achieve by transcendental meditation? Well, not much, but I lost $35 to pay for the mantra. Mantra cost $35. In 1970, $35, that would be like 15,000 rupees now. So I bought a mantra for 15,000 rupees. What did you get? Nothing, but I lost 15,000. I got 15,000 rupees poorer. That's what I got. You do yoga, do these things, but if you're actually looking, like, what's the truth? What's the purpose of life? What am I supposed to do? Then Rajneesh comes, Osho. Do whatever you want. Just, have all the sex you want. Someday you'll get burned out and become celibate. Yeah. You'll die of AIDS. That's how you'll become celibate. You just, smoke all the ganja you want. Someday you'll get burned out. You'll become a renunciate. It's like we were already having all the sex and ganja we wanted, and we were looking for something else. And Prabhupada said, no sex, no ganja. And we're like, okay, this makes sense, because we already had enough of it, so we could understand. And all the people coming to Prabhupada are like, he doesn't take LSD, we do. He's higher than we are. So why are we taking LSD? We got to get what he has, right? So because Prabhupada showed it, it was like, okay, nothing else was working. So that's, that all paths lead to the same. That's Ramakrishna. That's not Veda. That's Ramakrishna. Yatamat tatapat. Whatever your opinion, you take that path. Yatamat tatapat. Yeah. Makes so much sense. Yeah. If I go south, I'll get north. Oh. Very esoteric. I have to ponder on that. If you go south, you end up north. If you go north, you end up east. And if you go west, you go north. Esoteric. It must all be the oneness that's connected to everything. That any direction you go is the same as any other direction. Yeah, that's Ramakrishna. And people, see, we have to understand there are a lot of intelligent people who wanted to understand intelligent things, and a lot of people maybe who aren't that intelligent, who couldn't figure it out, but are intelligent enough that when they hear it, it'll make sense. And there are a lot of foolish people who actually don't want the truth, because if they get the truth, they'll have to do something. So the I'm you, you're me, one, go north, go south, it's great because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to surrender, there's no rule, there's no regulation. So a lot of us, we're burned out with that. So when Prabhupada said, do this, don't do that, we're like, okay, this is good. This is substantial. And the other people are like, oh, yeah, feel the bomb. Can you feel it? My guru is so wonderful. The way he smiles at me. Does he give you any instruction? No, he just smiles. But you can feel it, What does he say? He just laughs. But when he laughs, you feel that bob and you know that he's the real thing. I was like, oh my God, where did you get your brain? Did you actually have one? Or you're still waiting in line for them to give you one? So, when Prabhupada preached to us, then we when we heard all this bogus other stuff, we could see exactly what it was. But a lot of people couldn't. And so Prabhupada gives us intelligence. That's what his books do. So intelligent people, logical people, when they read the books, they're like, yes, this is it. And the other people who didn't want that, whose brains were, like maybe too much LSD, maybe too much sex, maybe they just are not that serious about spiritual life. Then they hear the other giggly, laughy gurus, that take your money for your mantra and When I was initiated by Maharishi, the requirement for initiation was that day, don't eat meat and don't have sex and take drugs on that day. So the next day you could, but that day you couldn't. That was the requirement. So then Prabhupada comes in the middle of this and says, no illicit sex, no drugs, no gambling, no meat eating. And we're all ready for it. Isn't that amazing? I'm like, yeah. And these other gurus say, no, do those things, you'll get burned out. I'm like, I'm already burned out. I'm not going to do that. And Prabhupada's saying, no. We're like, yeah, that makes sense. Isn't that interesting? Hare Krishna. Someone had a question, or we're finished, or time for breakfast? Oh, yes.
So we are seeing what America was 50 years before is the current position of India. So what is the peak that the Americans are going to advance in the material? Are they come down to the other way of looking at spirituality?
I think it'll go both ways in America. As it's going more materialistic, the spirituality is going up also. So maybe India will follow that. Maybe in 50 years it'll reverse. Like, I'll give you an example. It's so funny. You know how beauty, at least in the modern culture, for men, it's like, you have to be thin but big muscles. You can't be big, flabby, fat guy. And if you're big, flabby, fat, you better work out. And that flab can turn into muscle, and then you're like, all the girls are like, oh, it's so beautiful, big muscles. So, and same thing for women. It's like the thinner, the more attractive, right? But 30, 40 years ago, if you look at any Bollywood movie, all the women are fat. Because that was considered beautiful. Because if you didn't have money, you couldn't get fat. Right? Isn't it? Like, you go on the airplane, everybody's fat. You go on the train, everybody's thin. Have you noticed that? Because I can't afford to eat ghee and good rice. But on the you go on the airplane, it's like every man's got like, who knows what's in... Every man looks like he's pregnant. Is it a boy or a girl? No, it's gulab jamun. Hare Krishna. So, I totally lost my train of thought. So in 1920, I saw this herb. Someone had the herb from 1920, and it was an herb to make you fat. Because fat was beautiful, right? So now the herbs are to make you thin, right? Because thin is beautiful. I completely lost track of why I said that. Anyway.
You're saying it will reverse. Like,
oh yeah, it'll reverse. Yeah, exactly. It'll reverse. So, it's like now, in the 20s and 30s in America, medicine went all allopathic. It used to be herbal. All the doctors are herbal, and they had natural machines that would, infuse your body with ozone and things like that. And then it went allopathic. It was pharmaceuticals took over the universities. And, now you go to a doctor, okay, what's the symptom? Oh, I got a headache, I got a rash. Oh, he asks you 3 questions and that's the training, right? That's usually an antibiotic, right? But then it was much different. So now it's gone in reverse because we're seeing the problems with that, with allopathic medicine, the limitations and the side effects of drugs. So it's going in reverse. So so India, like in America, we're looking at yoga. We're thinking, yeah, yoga's really good. It's the best exercise, and it's the best thing for the mind and the emotions, and pranayama to calm you down and this and that. So maybe India will go, in 50 years, there's more yoga centers, yoga studios in the West per capita than there are in India. Isn't that weird? Same thing in China. You go to a park, Tai Chi. You know Tai Chi? You know? They play some soft music. Dun, 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 dun. All people over 50, 60. Yoga studios, all 20, 30. So the culture, they're giving up their Chinese culture and doing Indian culture. So that's, it's normal. So maybe if you're lucky, it'll turn around. So in America, on one hand, it's turning around with a lot of people going back to land, wanting to grow their own food, get out of the cities. In America, yeah, there's a whole movement, green movement, live simple. And another movement, obviously the materialism is always going to be there, but so both things are going on. So hopefully that will happen in India in the future, that you'll create such hellish jobs, such hellish cities, and everyone will have so much money that you can have anything you want that you'll just go. And you'll be so stressed out, and someone will say, hey, maybe you should do yoga. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. So maybe your stress levels have to rise to like 108 on the meter before everyone starts realizing, hey, we could do yoga and pranayama, that would calm us down.
It already started happening, Prabhuji. If you go to the IT hubs in Bangalore, so people are stressed, they're looking for somebody who can help them with it.
Yeah.
Their life is still...
Well, in America, like Google, they have yoga studio. You can do yoga anytime at Google. Or, a lot of places do meditation. Yeah, so that's good. So all this stuff is good. Yeah, it's good because maybe it'll bring you back. So understanding all this is a good strategy for preaching. You say, look at, why do you think yoga is so popular in America, the wonderful country with the Silk Roads and all the money and the beautiful Hollywood stars and that amazing president, Why do you think yoga is so popular? I said, because there's so much stress and depression. And guess what, my dear Indian friends? You have copied America, so stress and depression is one of the inheritances you will get from copying their culture. And so why don't you do like they're doing and be smart and do yoga and meditation, because that's how they're dealing with their stress. And it's already in your culture, and you can probably do it better than they can. And if you need a little help with it, just ask your grandmother, because she can probably enlighten you, more than, the gurus in America could enlighten their people. So you got it made, just so you can preach like that. Right? Yes.
How you came to Krishna consciousness, and can you tell your dealings with Prabhupada?
Oh yeah, I'm supposed to tell Prabhupada. How did I come? Well, it's really funny, because a lot of devotees will say, well, we came because we took drugs. And Prabhupada said, drugs are material, how can they help you? But the example is, it's like you're in a river and you catch onto a log and the log takes you to the other side. But when you get to the other side, you don't carry the log with you. Right? So the drug was kind of like the log that got us. It opened us up. So by the use of drugs, I became very aware that I don't need drugs, and that happiness and peace and all that should be achievable through other methods. I didn't know what those were, so I was really looking for it. And then I became disillusioned with whatever I was learning at university, because I wanted to learn why I'm here before what I'm going to do with my life. Like, okay, what do you want to be? I want to be an engineer. Well, what about your life? Oh, I'll worry about that later. I was like, no, what about life first? Then we'll figure out what we're going to do. Like, why do something if you don't know why you're alive? So, you say, we're going here to do this. Why are we going there to do that? Don't worry, just we're going there to do this. But for me, it was like, why are we doing it? So I was going crazy. In class. I'd sit in class completely bored. Like, this is stupid. Everything they teach me, I go, this is so stupid. What does this have to do with anything? You're reading some, fiction novel, Iliad, Odyssey, and, it's like, why am I reading this? I don't even know why I'm alive, so why should I read this? If the book doesn't tell me why I'm alive, why should I read it? So that was So you all know when the student is ready, the disciple is ready, the guru will come. So I was ready. And there was a devotee teaching Bhagavad Gita at the university. But the difference is, from your classes here, this class was actually an accredited university class. Isn't that amazing? So I could study Bhagavad Gita, and it was a full course at the university. And there was no homework. It was just read Bhagavad Gita, go to the temple twice a week and hear class. And I got an A, And it was considered a philosophy. So the student is ready. I was ready for Bhagavad Gita. Krishna arranged that I could take it as part of my class. That semester I took very few classes. I had lots and lots of time. I read the Bhagavad Gita twice. Go to the temple 3 times a week. I had plenty of time. So it was, so when I recount the history of that, it seems to me that I was meant to be a devotee. When I got to the age of 19, I was ready. At that point, Krishna said, okay, red carpet rolled out. There's going to be a Bhagavad Gita class. You're going to go to this. Number one, you're going to be raised in a neighborhood that's 6 blocks from the temple in Los Angeles. Number 2, you're going to go to a university 8 hours away where there's going to be a temple, and you're going to take a Bhagavad Gita class. And 3 months after you take that Bhagavad Gita class, you're going to meet Prabhupada in Los Angeles. So that's the red carpet treatment. So I just feel like that was my path, and Krishna knew it was my path. So he, people say, what did you do to become a devotee? I said, I didn't do anything. I was just there, and Krishna did it all. Bhagavad Gita class, Prabhupada. What did I have to do? I just had to sit there and listen. And then 3 months, and then after the semester, I moved in the temple. And then two months later, I'm initiated by Prabhupada. And in December, look at this. December, I go back to LA to tell my parents I'm going to become a devotee. And I go to the temple, and you want to go to the airport? Prabhupada's coming. So all these things, just boom, boom, boom. And so many devotees who are Prabhupada's disciples, their stories are the same. I was looking, I met Prabhupada, that was it, very fast. Just like boom, boom, boom. Like if you're hungry, I'll eat anything. We're hungry for knowledge, hungry for Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada comes, I'll take it. And Prabhupada needed people to help him. So Krishna sent so many devotees who obviously had been devotees in their past life. And we're just, why would you take to Krishna consciousness if you're raised in America and you don't know anything about Krishna? Until you go to the temple and 3 days later you're a brahmachari. How is that? Because you were a brahmachari in your last life. Like I was telling the devotees, I say, look at all these men now that are joining in India, and they're like brahmacharis. Like how? They're just like, they don't even think about marriage. And I go, because they were married in their last life and they're finished. I go, that was so difficult. I never want to do that again. and now they take birth. And they're like, do you want to get married? No. You're not attracted to household life? No, why not? I don't know. It doesn't attract me. Yeah. How does that happen? Not like, I'm struggling to be brahmachari. I'm really going to do it. I'm going to try, but it's really hard. No, I'm not attracted. Yeah, because last life. That was like, that's enough. That wife was so heavy in my last life. Those kids driving me crazy. Never again. I don't want to do it. Something like that. So, the same thing. Cultivate bhakti, you have certain realizations, you have certain understanding. So then you read Bhagavad Gita, it's like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. Just like that. So that's the real story behind the story. The external story is, it's the same for all devotees, Prabhupada disciples basically. But the story behind the story is that it's just reconnecting. And so, that mentality, and there's Bhagavad Gita, it's like, oh, you're reading Bhagavad Gita. It's like, seems like I know this book. Well, just really familiar to me, like that. And then you just take up chanting like you've been doing it your whole life. And in India, I'm knowing all these things. So unfortunate. In America, our great fortune is we're knowing nothing. In India, your great misfortune is you're knowing all these things. You can make that a title of a lecture. Your greatest misfortune, quote unquote, I am knowing all these things. That's your lecture title. Right? And you just tell them, you are so unfortunate because you know all these things. And Americans are so fortunate because they don't know anything. And therefore they accepted it. And you're thinking you know it all, when actually you don't. You know how to forget it, that's what you know. And you think you understand. Yes? Is that okay? Oh, Prabhupada? What? What about Prabhupada? What was it like?
I mean, what was your dealings with Prabhupada?
Nice. I was just stupid, foolish. Sometimes he'd have to chastise me. But he said I was sincere also. Yeah, it's like Prabhupada was like the father we never had. You know, you want your father to give you guidance and like that. And your father's guiding you materially, you know, but spiritually, no. So Prabhupada was like that father we never had. Give us that spiritual guidance. So it was like, and everything that Prabhupada was teaching us was all new. So it was like the Pied Piper, you know, just like, here's this person that no one's ever met a person like that. No one's ever met a person who knows these things. So it was just like, I don't know, to me it was kind of like every day was like a dream. We took it for granted because it was every day. But at the same time, we knew it was so special that here's a pure devotee. And, you know, a few years earlier, there was no pure devotee in America. And now, a few years later, there's a pure devotee. And somehow there were devotees. And somehow we're hearing from him, or going on a walk, or in his room. It's like, wow. It was just, like, incredible. So, being with Prabhupada was unlike being with anyone else. And it was mesmerizing, enamoring. And so blissful, and so powerful. But I did some stupid. I wanted to do stupid things. I didn't do them. I wanted to. Prabhupada told me I was nonsense. Things like that. But he had a lot of faith in us, in our sincerity. So, I mean, to answer your question, we need another hour or two. If you go to my SoundCloud, I have, I think, 29 lectures on Prabhupada. I did a whole series, and it's being transcribed now into a book. So you'll get to read it. Okay? Mahaprasade Govinde. Namo Brahmani Vaishya. Swapapanya Vito Rajan. Vishwasananda. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O Premanandi. Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
His Grace Mahatma Prabhu ki
Jai.
We thank Prabhuji for giving his wonderful association here, coming all the way. I think I'm loudly chanting.
Hari Bol!
Hari Bol! Hari Bol!
Go, don't go. Hare Krishna.